What if I told you guys that even today, sitting there listening to this space, you're building your glory days, and the only question is, what are the materials that you're using to build your glory days? I'm laughing because I look at Tyler. I think, are you building it with a speed bag? I look at Richard. Are you building it at a computer console? I look at Jane. Are you building your glory days with AI? And so I really hope this space, what it does to you guys today, is to realize that glory days don't have a time limit. You can build different glory days at any age. You can segue, but most of all, we all start at the same place. It doesn't matter what glory days you're building. You're gonna start in obscurity. Even if you're a really, really famous person, I know people that I hear about, they were, writing a book, but they didn't get famous writing a book. They got famous acting, but the writing of the book, unless they hired a ghostwriter, um, they had to sit there alone at a typewriter. I think of a story I heard about Ernest Hemingway. He was such a good writer because all his writing was in obscurity, and he really took it personal. When people just dropped by his house in Key West, he would put out a sign that said, "Mr. Hemingway is busy writing. Basically, leave me alone." And so, I'd like to talk about what's the value of obscurity, because if you've been around social media long enough, especially X, you'll just hear people complain about what the algorithm is doing. Oh, the algorithm is stifling me. The algorithm isn't letting me leap ahead. The algorithm isn't sharing out my stuff. Well, I want to point out really quickly that the energy that you spend focused on complaining about that crap is going to take away from the energy you could spend on being successful and effective at that success. We had a great space yesterday with Darren. And by the way, Richard, I keep trying to bring you up, but for some reason, oh, okay, maybe it worked that time. I've literally hit this button.
I'm up here.
Okay, I literally hit that button like 5 times, it wasn't working, but, oh, well, technology, a lot of my buttons haven't worked well today. This has been one of the busiest days that I've had all year, I think. It's just been, I hate to say insanity or chaos. I don't wanna, be grandiose or catastrophize it, but that too, a lot of building in obscurity is that things are gonna go wrong. And another part about building in obscurity is there's not go no one's coming to rescue you, right? It's not like a lot of stuff that I do. I can say, "Hey, I'm gonna, subcontract this crap out to somebody." It's just me, and then a little personal note, when I try to contract some of this stuff out, some of my busy work, I hate to sound like I'm a perfectionist, but people just don't do it right. If you want something done right, do it yourself. A lot of times that's freaking true. You know, and stories. I've got so many stories. My son said on this pool building thing, we should have kept a journal that we could publish it and share with people. The Zen and the Art of Pool Building or something. There's a book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but it took a lot of Zen to build this pool. And I'm still building. I've literally had one, two, three, four, five contractors here this morning, giving them direction on how to do things, and some things aren't working right. My previous electrical contractor, for whatever goofy reason, ran a 120 to the positive wire to 120 to the neutral wire. Man, we got voltage running every which way. Another one, actually the same one, clipped the wire, so now I got to tear out a stone column. No biggie, it's just a stone column. Piece of cake, piece of butter. Got to tear that thing out to access a wire, and then engineered a switch to nowhere. Anybody have any switches to nowhere in your house? You have a switch, you have no idea what the switch does. I think sometimes electricians do that kind of thing just for fun. Hey, watch this. We're going to put in a switch. It does nothing. They're going to spend like the next half decade or next half century figuring out what the switch is for. It never did anything. It's just our trick on them. But part of building in obscurity is there's no one coming to rescue you. There's no one to help you figure things out. I've had many, many people offer to write a book for me. Well, gosh, then it'd be your book. You need to put your name on it. I don't know. Maybe I'm too possessive. I guess I see a place for ghostwriters, but how does somebody ghostwrite your memoir for you or something? I don't know. Maybe there's a way. But today we'll be talking about this. This is actually Long Brain's idea, and I want to go with him in a moment because this is based on Bob Dylan. By the way, the movie, A Complete Unknown, fascinating movie. We're going to dig a bit into the philosophy behind that, the psychology behind that, and we're going to be talking about the what you might call the Dylan method. I don't think that's trademark. Maybe it should be, but the Dylan method. And I'm going to go through the steps really, really quick that I hope to cover. If you're going to, become whatever, you're going to have to choose your myth. Think of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. You're going to have to choose your myth. Who do you want to become? So some of becoming is discovery, but a lot of it, and I think the biggest part of it, is picking a target. So choose your myth. Build in the shadows. Mastery before attention, mastery before notoriety, mastery before success. A lot of people, my dad had this word bass backwards. A lot of people get it bass backwards. What I really want is to be famous, and then I'll create something. Well, what sense does that make? Why should you be famous? Why put more, shoe leather on it? Why should you be monetized? What is it that makes what you do monetizable? People, we all have a bias. We all think that our stuff, for the most part, if you're a creator, I know it's kind of a seesaw. Sometimes you think your stuff is crap and you wonder why anybody would read it. And then sometimes you think that your stuff it's the best stuff. It's the greatest stuff. I have the greatest stuff. No one's stuff is greater than my stuff. The sad thing is nobody knows it because I'm a complete unknown. So you got to be willing to build in the shadows because one day, mark my words, and some of you folks here of a certain age, I hesitate to call names. I'll put my name alongside yours. You're going to look back, and the things that you don't find value in now, you'll look back on with great fondness. And my most fond years are not the years when I was making it big or whatever. I used to have 6 behavioral health clinics. I built them. I wrote the policies. It was a book about, gosh, I don't know, 4 inches thick or some nonsense that I'm sure no one ever read but me, but whatever. And then I sold them. I have helped clinics across the country build DDCUs, dedicated dementia care units, hired staff for them. I've gone in as part of a hit team and taken over facilities. Hey, guess what, guys? All you guys are fired. Y'all can go home now. We'll take it from here. But that's not the fondest things I look back on. The fondest things that I look back on is when there's always somebody at the door when I'm in the middle of a space. I should have a sign like Ernest Hemingway. Don't disturb me. I'm in the middle of space. But anyway, the fondest years I found are the toughest years. Let me just take building my pool. At the time, it seemed really, really hard, especially if I was on the way to the ER because I fell off a ladder or whatever, or almost got heat stroke, had heat exhaustion, or I got cellulitis and the lower part of my leg turned black and blue. Uh, but it's during those struggles that you look back on and you think, gosh, it really is, as Miley Cyrus sings, it's about the climb. It's not about the peak. It's all about the climb. And next, invent a voice. Borrow first, morph later. Borrow first. Decide who you're going to emulate. Decide who you're going to be. Don't catastrophize the crickets. Don't catastrophize the crickets. Silence can be sacred. Most of your growth, if you're a workout buff, is not in the gym. It's in the silence of bedtime. And then finally, don't apologize for evolving. Your audience is going to catch up. If you're doing something that serves people, your audience is going to catch up. And there's stories about Bob Dylan doing this. And Stephen King, by the way, I don't know that he would admit to this, but I wouldn't say he quite plagiarized it, but I do think he got it from Dylan, Bob Dylan. The moment you stop growing is the moment you start dying. In Shawshank Redemption, there came a point where the amazing Morgan Freeman said, "You got to get busy living, or you got to get busy dying." And he put those words in the character played by Morgan Freeman. Bob Dylan first said, "The moment you stop growing is the moment you start dying. The moment you stop growing is the moment you start dying." And so, what about building in obscurity? What about stopping seeking for the limelight? Stopping worrying about how many followers you have, stopping fixating on, oh my goodness, I opened a space and nobody showed up at me. Listen, I did a space for my subscribers last week, and the week before, by the way. I was the only one in the space. And then my friend Uncle Al showed up, and it was good to see Uncle Al there. He observed, and I was speaking. It's only a 20-minute space, but I've had lots and lots of spaces where I just open the space and start talking. That's it. Open the space and start talking. And I think that there's a particular mindset that goes with that. And we'll get to that deep seated personal belief in a moment. But let me go to Long Brain and then get TMR's take on this. Long Brain, it was your idea to do the Bob Dylan space. What is that sticks out to you about his life that seems so important that it's worth talking about?
Well, I think look at Bob Dylan before Alex Grossman. He brought us the Bob Dylan we know now. Bob Dylan was on a label, big label, barely selling any albums, barely getting a paying gig. That Alex Grossman brought out his record contract, his publishing contract, and brought us the Bob Dylan we know now. It's an interesting story.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Just the whole history of how different his trajectory was than a lot of other musicians and songwriters is amazing. I look forward to digging into that. And by the way, Longbury, you know, not co-host with me before. If you have a comment, jump in. Let me know what you think. TMR knows how that goes. But TMR, what are your thoughts on this Bob Dylan trajectory to success and notoriety, and how we might leverage it for our own when we're building in obscurity?
Yeah, really interesting topic. I'll start off by saying I basically know nothing about Bob Dylan. So I'm gonna just kind of preface that. But this building an obscurity idea I think is really interesting because I specifically have been attempting to do it more and more um, throughout all the different stages in my growth. I would think, oh, I'm definitely capable of doing X, Y, Z. I'm going to go and just do it. And then you pretty much figure out very quickly that you're going to fall flat on your face. And why is that? Not because I'm an idiot, but because I didn't have any experience. And so what's interesting is we have to give ourselves the period of being able to learn and fail in somewhat of a cycle, or learn and iterate. And a lot of that ends up happening behind the scenes, like kind of like you mentioned, before the notoriety, before the visible success. It kind of reminds me of Jeff Bezos, how you could find clips of him on news, on the news, where people are basically making fun of him, like, why are you selling books or whatever. And basically, he had a vision. He understood that he had a direction he was going in, and even though no one else understood it, he did what he had to do. He showed up every day, and obviously it kind of worked out for him. Now, of course, that's an end case. It also kind of reminded me of something that I love to say, and I don't know where I got it from, why I came up with it, if I came up with it. Everything's recycled, but something that I like to always remind myself, at least I like it, is life is an endless chain of problems. Now, note I'm using the word problem here like a math problem, something to be solved. So life is a chain of endless problems. To live is to solve. So if you stop solving, you're no longer living. And I love that because it could be as simple as what am I eating for lunch? Or it can be who am I becoming? And then there's a bunch of interconnected problems that you can solve there. And then it goes back to kind of, man's search for meaning. What's the purpose of life? And we have to design it. And I'm glad you kind of hit on that, Dr. Heath. You're not going to find it under a rock, like you always say. You're not going to find it, in any old book, let's say minus religious texture. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself, and hopefully you make it bigger than yourself. I kind of brought up that one space. You kind of want to design an ultimate purpose that extends to at least one day after your death or into eternity, because if you do anything shorter, especially way shorter, like, oh, I'm going to get the Lamborghini, you're probably going to run into issues once you get it. I don't I don't know, muted wasn't me, but that's basically all I have to say, Dr. Heath. Glad to be here.
I'm sorry I hit that by accident. I've looked at the requests.
Yeah, that's okay. That happens a lot. That happens a lot. I wish they would move that around, maybe pick a blank space on the screen, like beside my record button, and put the add a speaker button at the top. You guys can recommend that by typing that into at spaces and complaining about it. Squeaky wheel, squeaky wheel. Well, yeah, today we're going to talk about that. And it really is, Tim R, a good point that as you were speaking, I was thinking, imagine a life where there were no problems to solve. Imagine a life where you got everything you wanted. I want a carrot, and a carrot appears not in your hand because it'd be too much work to stick it in your mouth. It literally appeared in your mouth. All of a sudden, you got a mouthful of carrot just because you wish for a carrot. Well, the people that I worked with throughout my career tend to be at the height of their misery once they get everything they want, because once you get everything you want, all the meaning of life goes away. It's really in the creating. And Long Brain, you can comment on this because I'm not a musician. I love music. I love to sing. I did take piano for a couple of semesters at Lyon College, but I would not say I'm a musician. But I do love music. I had a friend of mine say, if I gave you $1 million, would you give up music in exchange for having 1 million, but you'd have to give up music the rest of your life? I said no, because music is such a important part of my life. At some of my lowest points, I'll sing some of my favorite songs to myself. I don't punish other people with that, but I sing it to myself. But imagine getting everything you want immediately. Wouldn't you? I think if you think about it, you'll see that if you got everything you wanted as quick as you wanted it, then nothing you want would have meaning whatsoever. It's only in the working at it. I remember in my bodybuilding days, I was hearing about guys getting calf implants. I thought, calf implants? What the crap, man? Why not just go do calf raises? That's what I do. I do calf raises till my calves burn, till I can't walk. And then I sit there till I can walk, and then I punish the calf again until it starts, shuddering and quivering and cramping up and everything. And so if you look at a songwriter like Dylan, what you'll discover is he never stopped creating, and it's in the plethora of creating that you get some nuggets. You don't go to a diamond field, Murfreesboro diamond field at Arkansas, and see diamonds with a bit of dirt. You see a whole lot of dirt out of which you got to dig the diamonds. Longbrain, go ahead.
Right, right. They call Grossman, the guy I was talking about before, the insider, the snake in the garden, like the insider of insiders. He encouraged Dylan to write more songs. Dylan at some point took a trip to England to be a musician in a play, and in between nights in the play, he took a trip to the British folk scene, met up with some songwriters, and learned how to write longer songs. So we went in stuff like Girl from North Country, one of his best writings to date. The song he did with Johnny Cash, the song that Rosanna Cash covered, Johnny's daughter. So yeah, there's that. All
That's
their
amazing.
different places led to better songwriting and other things like that. Dragging folk right into pop. It had to go somewhere and change at some point.
Yeah, let me do a pop quiz for you guys. Guess where the Beatles got their 10,000 hours of practice to achieve musical mastery? Does anybody know the answer to that question? The Beatles? Long Brain, do you know? In
In
a
Hamburg.
huh?
In Hamburg.
I think you may be right, but specifically in a strip club.
Right. In Hamburg.
I'm not recommending that. I'm not recommending pack up your whatever riding kit and go ride in a strip club or whatever. Or imagine Dr. Oceanek. Yeah, we're gonna develop our 10,000 hours of mastery writing research papers in a strip club, unless your research is about a strip club. But my point is that the people that hired them, they didn't care. They didn't care if they sucked. They didn't care. They just wanted noise in the background. And so the Beatles got to make noise, and people didn't criticize because, it's a strip club. People weren't focused on them at all. They're focused on the naked people in the strip club, and the Beatles weren't the ones that were naked, so they didn't get all the attention. And the point is, it's kind of like the book Tipping Point, where we know that you got to, invest around 10,000 hours to gain mastery over anything. So apply that to a lot of the quote influencers that you see on social media that are flashes in the pan that have been creating whatever for a minute. I mean, no offense to anybody, but my son's 25, but I know kids that are, 19. You've been creating for what, a minute or two because you left the womb like yesterday and you're expecting to be this grand success or whatever. No, no, no. You haven't spent enough time in the trenches. And I have a friend of mine who owns a huge construction company, one of the biggest, in the area, really biggest in many, many states. Started out doing what? Running a magical shovel, with the sweat of his brow, and now owns, millions and millions of dollars worth of big, dirt moving equipment. But he certainly didn't start being the boss of bosses doing this. He started running a shovel because the dad said, "Hey, boy, pick up that shovel, dig a hole." And you dig enough holes, you get to learn the dirt misses pretty good. But also the people that start out at the top tend not to be the best people at their job. It's the people that start at the bottom and secure in obscurity that tends to be the best, the master. So in his job, there's no niche whatsoever of his company that he has not worked, and that's why it's so successful. Let me go around to some hands here, Dr. Roshnak, Pat, and Star Soup. But Dr. Roshnak, what do you say?
I say, what a great topic. I love this. Um, I was glad that I had some time to finally come into your room from the beginning and I saw the topic. I said, oh, yes. So, excuse me. Lots of things to say about this, and I'm trying to remember the name. I'll try to put the video up in the Nest if you want me to. I think it's called the Nest. Um, of just responding to what you were saying right now, of somebody who's very, very high level tech guy, and he will sweep the floors. He even now as the founder slash CEO, he's like, there isn't a single job in this company that I'm not willing to do because it's my company. I have to do it. Teaching by example, the whole nine. And so that's the attitude of why did you go into this? So that's kind of where I goes back into where my first thought was when I wanted to share this. Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Sorry.
And I know so many really famous people that they would not expect that.
Mm.
And I've known, the undercover boss thing. I think that's
Oh
a
yeah,
magnificent
that's
thing.
right.
I think that everybody, if you run a company, you should spend some time as an undercover boss. Now, I'm not saying this next thing to brag. I'm really not. It's just a story. But I was, building my pool. I've done construction since the time I was could hold a hammer. Literally, I was hammering stuff by the time I was probably 4 years old. And I still have a thing that I made with my name. It's kind of ugly, but it spells my name. But I was in the backyard trying to show some guys what to do with some plumbing in a muddy hole. They clearly weren't understanding. And so I jumped down in the hole. I got all muddy. I showed them what to do. I got out of the hole. My friend, who actually worked for my dad, Lewis, he's a mason, master mason, one of the best masons, well, the best mason I've ever met. He said, "Well, you earned that guy's respect." I didn't understand what he was talking about. But he said, "You got down there and showed him how to do it." Well, yeah, see, to me, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I do that? If I'm the best person to teach you or to do something, then why wouldn't I, get my hands dirty, get my feet dirty? Listen, mud washes off. No one is above mud unless you're cremated. Guess and unless we embalm you, by the way, and prop you up in the corner. Guess where we're going to plant you when you die? In the mud. That's where most of us are going to wind up. So get used to it, guys. You're going to spend most of your, until the resurrection or whatever, most of your existence in a 6 foot deep hole of, you got it, mud. Dr. Rosnak, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I was thinking of a couple of things. Number one is engagement and alignment. So why are you doing the thing that you're doing? If you're doing something because it fits with what your passion is and what you want to do and what you're good at and what the world needs. The whole why can't I think today? Ikigai, sorry. The whole thing about ikigai, right? So you find this thing that the world wants and that you're good at, etc., and you can make a living doing. So you're in great alignment with yourself when you're doing that. And if you're doing that, at least in the beginning, more or less quietly, you have the opportunity to do something in that alignment and stay in your alignment as you're going through whatever it is that you're doing, as opposed to getting knocked out because now this person has this opinion and that person makes you feel like you're going down the wrong track, or so on and so forth. So one of the greatest joys in life, if not the way to truly be alive, is to be engaged in life. And it gives you the opportunity to be truly engaged as opposed to engaged, starting off engaged and then becoming distracted by all the different noise that is coming at you and the different directions that you're being pulled. And so you start to get pulled out of your own alignment because we have a vision. And the vision each of us is given is for us. It's something that we know that we can do in a certain way. Now, of course, you want to be responsive to whoever your audience is or your clients are, et cetera. And of course, you want to hear other voices. But that's going to happen anyway. I'm talking about the volume of how much you're going to get that, and early on when you're still trying to figure it out. So I think one of the best reasons to start off, at least in obscurity, is that you can be optimally engaged while staying in alignment. And that strengthens you so that you're now prepared when you go out there and there is a lot of noise. In other words, you aren't that overnight star who's suddenly overwhelmed and doesn't know how to manage anything, which also connects to the idea of how everything works. All the lower level resistances that you got and lessons that you had to learn, you were able to do without major fallouts. So you're able to learn, and then now you can scale that as you start to scale. And so that lower level of resistance is actually extremely beneficial on multiple levels, and it gives you a sense of integrity as you do grow. And the time that you have not dealing with all the noise also allows you to process and reflect as you're growing, as you're learning, as you're figuring out the direction to go in. Because you will grow organically, because you will get, resistance and feedback and so on and so forth. And you will be able to be responsive rather than being reactive. So there's space to learn and to grow with much lower risk. And I'll just add this, that comedians, even like top comedians, world famous comedians, always practice in obscurity. Like you were saying, the strip clubs, they take their material on the road into these like teeny tiny little nowhere places, and they practice and practice and practice to see what the reception will be. And then they fine tune it to every single second of response they now know to expect. And then they'll be like on Netflix. So even no matter how big they are, they will practice their material until they hone it in obscurity, and then they go and express their greatness. And so and a beautiful example of, I'm going to stop there. So I think that's quite a lot, but there's a lot to be said for growing in obscurity. And also, as now we take it on the global scale, I said I would stop. I'll add one thing, is that as we look on things on a global scale, the people that are the greatest power players, by and large, are the people whose names you don't know. And if you bumped into them on the street, you wouldn't know them. And that's exactly how big money and big power likes it. Less resistance. They can quietly do whatever they need to do.
Oh, and that is the beauty of building in obscurity, is not only just honing your craft, but the absence of resistance. I think, I didn't think of this till you brought that up, but such a great point that people tend to give up on, I think, what you might call alignment much too early, just because they get pushback from a predetermined number of people. Like if six people disagree with me, I'm going to go the other way. Or if, seven people outvote me on whatever talent I'm trying to produce or acquire, I'm going to give up. And if you are in alignment with your values and direction in life, it really shouldn't be up for a vote. Now that's different than critique. But long brain, go ahead.
very interesting stuff. Like me as an artist, I'm living in an art town and I'm building from obscurity. One day I might be doing shows in bigger galleries and be the toast of the town. I don't think I'm the best in town because there's so many different kinds of artists. I figured whoever's the biggest studio might be the best in town. They're in the top five, and I'm somewhere outside that building obscurity, but one day it might be bigger. Do you think Dylan is the best songwriter ever? It's my take.
you, you know, at the risk of Dr. Vincent Benitez listening and thoughts that he might fail me on my final exam some 35 years ago, I'll have to say no, it's got to be the Beatles because he said if you get this wrong, you fail the whole course. The greatest songwriters, musicians of all time are the Beatles. So,
Well, I mean, their songwriting team. I mean, one person sitting there writing a song. That's
oh yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah.
I heard somebody. I was watching a special or maybe the preview of an Alan Jackson, amazing country artist. Google Alan Jackson, listen to the song. What's that river called? Chickasaw Rivers. I don't know.
I
It's weird.
saw him a few years back in Nashville.
Oh,
When
really? Yeah, Alan Jackson. And they said that Alan Jackson was near on par with Waylon Jennings. And I never thought of Waylon Jennings as being a great country songwriter, but evidently there's a backstory there that I don't know about. I remember consult another one, TMR said I'm not sure I know much about Bob Dylan, but I was in a office with I was consulting, doing contract work with a neuropsychology agency and I just messing with the guy, right? So I see something on his desk about the man in black, and I said, "Huh, the man in black? Who's that?" And he looked at me. He said, "Johnny Cash." I said, "Who's Johnny Cash?" He said, "You know what? You're fired. I'm ending your contract today." He took such insult that I didn't know Johnny Cash was. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good songwriters out there. But and Johnny Cash, by the way, Johnny Cash wrote what he wrote from tragedy. He wrote what he wrote from the death of his brother and without that tragedy. So, a lot of the best artworks, well, take anything written by Homer, Homeric tragedies, the Odysseus, the Odyssey, the Iliad, all of that is based in tragedy. But we tell ourselves the wrong things about it. If you've heard people say our brains lie to us, our brains really don't lie to us. What they do is they offer us hypotheses. They offer us a myriad, a blizzard of hypotheses. The problem is that we choose the wrong hypotheses to ruminate on and to center our mindset on. And so how you determine to look at these hypotheses when you're building in obscurity, when you try something out and your audience doesn't like it, like Dylan was booed when he tried a different style of music in, I don't know, New York somewhere. But he didn't care. He didn't care because, as Dr. Rochnak said, he was staying in alignment, and your audience doesn't choose that for you. You choose that. And so, let me go to some of these hands here. Tyler Monette and Star, and Pat. Tyler, what do you say?
Pat's hand up was up before me.
Well, thank you, Pat. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Tala. You always see my hand up. Gosh, everybody said what I was going to say, so I'll be short. But the only thing somebody hadn't said, and I'll start with this, is that Bob Dylan's the greatest poet of my generation. The- I'm going to end that about Bob Dylan, but I want to talk about Longbranch as because I create art doing it in obscurity is so important to me because when you create art, you develop your own style. Like everybody would know it's a Monet. And so art has to be done in obscurity because if you're getting too many opinions in it, it's going to pollute your art. So for me, being away from public opinion or others is so important. It's crucial to what I do creating art. And I'm gonna leave it there because all of you kind of said what I wanted to say. So thanks, and go ahead, Tala.
Yeah, let me say this about algorithms. The only time I ever think about that or have any concerns is when there's a friend who normally I would see on my feed and they've disappeared for weeks or months. It doesn't really mean anything to me as far as my own content because I didn't start social media with any other purpose than to help other people climbing out of the same level of dysfunction that I started out with. Now, while you might look at that and say, well, if the algorithm worked better, then you'd reach more people. Um, yeah, I get that. However, I can't spend my time worrying about that because it is something that is outside of my control. I see people drive themselves absolutely crazy trying to figure it out, trying to hypothesize, following a certain large account that thinks he's got it figured out. Uh, and I can't be led around by the nose by stuff like that. That's like trying to get your news from social media and going, "Oh my god, this is happening. Oh my god, that's happening. Did you see this? Ooh, I can't wait till that happens." And I'm watching people just run in circles going, "Calm down." It's hype. It's engagement farming. It's meant to stir you up. It's meant to make you angry. Okay. I know we don't necessarily see things exactly eye to eye on manipulation, Dr. Heath. However, we do know that there is an influence factor. So, yes, you can choose.
Oh yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and you're right. You're right. This is the intent. I had, and I know some of you've heard this story, but my son came home. Dad, there's a new workout. There's a new workout in the magazine, and I'm just playing with him. I said, "Why do you think that a workout magazine would have a new discovery world class bench press workout?" He said, "Oh, because it helps people grow faster." No, no, no. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. The purpose is to give you another reason to buy the magazine.
Yeah. So,
That's it.
I mean, you can choose what you do with it, was my point there. But the influence is definitely there. It's just some people are more gullible, which I posted a video about. Don't be so gullible. Don't be led down whatever path. And this whole algorithm chase will do the same thing to you. And so what happens? You then become distracted. And that is absolutely dangerous if you have important goals. So this is something that I have worked very hard on with my mentor. Distraction is it's a killer when it comes to important content. So I'm not interested in reaching the masses. I'm interested in reaching the people who need to hear what I teach the most. And I have to exercise a certain amount of faith and say, the people who are meant to hear what I'm talking about and see what my experience has been, they will run across me. And your best friend in that is word of mouth. So there's a delicate balance also because my mentor would have me completely build in silence and obscurity. And I have a project upcoming that is very important, and I have been very cagey about where I talk about it, and I've been very careful. However, at a certain point, because of what I'm doing, yes, I do have to make announcements. However, his recommendation on that did slow me down a little bit.
Whoops, somebody just muted everyone.
Well, I know it wasn't me this time.
Once
So
button. I'm listening.
at some point, because of what I'm doing, then yes, I do have to make announcements. But his recommendation slowed me down a little bit so that I could find a happy medium, a middle ground. And the point I decided that I will make announcements about the upcoming projects is Ms. Pat down there wants to interview me. So I decided we're going to talk about that when she interviews me because that's a good time for it. But it gave me time to collect my thoughts And rather than putting it out there for every troll and every weirdo and just putting it out there too quickly, which can give you negative feedback, you don't want that. Um, Instead of putting it out there so early that there would be distraction, I have taken the time to figure out what is my plan and put my team together for what I'm doing. So sometimes it's only a matter of slowing down, not necessarily being completely silent forever about it. Because if you're doing something that is meant to reach people, then at some point they do need to hear it or see it.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. And by the way, for you spaces hosts and co-hosts, you might find some humor in this. I wish I knew how to screen record my screen because literally it is toggling between request, mute everyone, request, mute everyone, request, mute everyone. And I mean, 1 second it's on one configuration, 1 second it's on the other. It's almost like there's gremlins
Do you want a
in
trick
the
for avoiding that problem on the mute button?
yeah.
Okay, so instead of tapping the requests button, tap the person's profile and add them as speaker from there.
I should do that. Oh, because it says, yeah, I'm going to start doing that. What a wonderful tip. You should post that in the Exposium. I know, it's amazing. I never thought about that. So if I type Richard, I can tap add speaker. And you know what? When I do that, it adds him as a listener. And then it went right back to request. But that's not because what Tyler said doesn't work. It's that I've tried to add Richard about 15 times today, and Richard refuses to be added. He
He
just
might need to
refuses.
update his app.
It could be. It could be me. Could be me. So you're based on what Tyler said. Let me just share this, and we'll go into some hands. Think of your brain as a bit of a newsroom. It's kind of a fast paced editorial board firing off headlines. And one headline might be, oh my gosh, what if I'm irrelevant? What if I'm forgotten? What if no one sees my stuff? What if no one ever recognizes my worth? Well, and then you've got to figure out what story to run on page one. And it really is up to you what story to run on page one. Bob Dylan kind of went an interesting way. He decided, well, what if I just make up who I am and the world believes it? And so there's this guy from nowhere that decides I'm going to pick a last name, which really is my last name, just because it's catchy. And again, it's just branding. It's just branding. And the director of the movie, A Complete Unknown or biopic, whatever, the quote he had was, Dylan wasn't running from his past. He was editing it. You get to decide what story gets out there about who you are. You get to curate your story, but you're first going to curate it in your own mind. You're going to curate it in your own mind. There's a psychologist, Dan McAdams, he calls this narrative identity function, the narrative identity function of the brain. We just don't remember life. We really construct its meaning by how we sequence our memories, what emphasis we put on those memories, and importantly, how we retell them. Now, I've told you guys a lot of stories about my past, and it is to make a point, but also it helps me edit how I choose to remember those. It helps me edit how I choose to remember those. Losing my mom was a tragedy. I was 4 years old. But I like to remind people that if that blood clot would not have happened, I would have never met any of you guys. I would not have attended the school I attended. I would not have gotten into the university or the college that I got into at the urging and helpfulness of my mother in law. And I wouldn't have married the lovely wife that I married or had the son that I have. I might have had a son, but it wouldn't have been this son. So you see, in reminding myself of that daisy chain journey from one thing to another, even and especially with the tragedies. Uh, would I've chosen differently if I could go back in time and chosen not to have this terrible thing happen? I wouldn't do that. because even that terrible thing that happened led to me being who I became. And so what Bob Dylan did is he literally selected better hypotheses about himself. And he uses obscurity kind of like a blank page. And on that blank page, he wrote his persona, and he wrote it in a way that the world eventually, inevitably could not ignore it. Let me go to our next hand here. Oh, Long Brain, go ahead. L-
Very unique take on it. Uh, since I read the book Dylan Goes Electric, Folkies, in a sense, should not have been shocked or surprised. When he was in Minneapolis, Robert Zimmerman played in a rockabilly, rock and roll, R&B, blues band under different names. So Electric was just going to come back, kind of back to sender, kind of like full circle. And everything was going electric. They invited Paul Butterfield Blues band to play that year. So blues was going electric. So eventually everything would go electric. It was a new age in a new world, 1965.
What wonderful years those were. I remember them fondly. The mid '60s. Well, I kind of do. I was a bit young at the time, but I came to look back on those, and those two. I've decided to put it in a very certain way about how I choose to remember them. Your future is going to be determined by how you choose to remember your past. By the way, uh, you get how that works. Your future will be determined by how you decide to remember your past. Monette, what do you say? Then we'll go to Jane. Uh,
Good morning, Dr. Heath. Well, I love your topic today. I want to greet good morning to TMR. Long brain, I wonder how long is your brain? Rock on. I see Jane, Tala, Dr. Roshanak, Richard, Pat, Barbara. I see brother Stephen there. I see sister Kim, Jackie, Harmony. Welcome. I see Patriot, Sarah, and all your lovely listeners around, including your anonymous ones, Dr. Heath. Well, what I'm thinking is substance over flash, right? The power of quiet moments and creativity. When I saw your title today, I suddenly imagined Dr. Heath, myself working in the shadows, away from the harsh glare of the spotlight where real magic happens, and then there will be sound effects. It reminds me whenever I place myself with status hibernating with Teams app to inform my team or the person who wants to reach out that they need to schedule or have a meeting instead. I'm on vacation. I'm not available at the moment. In my opinion, this is where some individuals can dive deep or explore into their passions and unleash meaningful progress. By stripping away distractions, having quiet moments, and the burdens of, say, pride or ego, they learn to prioritize substance over mere superficial blah, 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 hallelujah, so superficiality, gaining likes, followers, and attention. As we all know, great things take time. Think about the great minds of history like Isaac Newton, the man behind gravity, a mathematician, physicist, astronomer, you name it. Newton was a key figure in the scientific revolution and enlightenment that followed hunkered down during the plague, transformed solitude into profound breakthroughs. He refined his craft free from the weight of public expectation. And this embrace of obscurity isn't just about hiding, it's all about cultivating fierce discipline and authentic creativity. It's a potent foundation for creating that lasting impact when the world finally takes notice. Is the work infused with depth and integrity that truly resonates and stands the test of time. So, for those who love quiet moments, or to my fellow introverts, remember that there's extraordinary potential that lies within you. And I like what you mentioned, Dr. Heath, about Newsflash, reporting live from Dr. Heath's world renowned X Clinic. Thanks for having me on stage, Dr. Heath, and have a lovely day ahead, everyone. Godspeed.
Monette, wonderful job, wonderful job. And every time that I get my words messed up, I'm going to start shouting hallelujah. I love that. That's a great takeaway. Thank you so much. Okay. Who was next here? I think it might have been Jane.
Yeah. Hey, hello. It's been a while. Um, I loved what you said in the beginning of the space.
See, I'm going to stop just doing that. I'm not going to add anybody else the rest of space because every time I try to add
I gave
somebody,
you a tip.
I tried it out. It didn't, but I'm going to keep trying it out. Tyler, thank you for the reminder. Jane, go right ahead.
Oops, I was mic'd up because you muted me and I thought I was talking. Yeah, keep your fat fingers away from that mute button. Anyway, I loved what you said in the beginning of the space, that there is no time limits on building greatness. You can do it at any age. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can do it just as well as a youngster and maybe even better when you're older. Just saying, because you got some wisdom in your back pocket. Um, the one thing that always stays with me is my favorite philosopher is a man from the 1940s. His name was Emmett Fox. Um, I had a book of his called A Year in the Round with Emmett Fox. He's also the author of Sermon on the Mount. And he said that in one of the it was a daily meditation book. And on one of those daily meditations, that was his subject matter, is that when you are setting out to do something that's very special to you, that you want to create or make or become, don't tell anybody. Just start doing it. Otherwise, you probably won't ever get to the end of it, because when you, like everybody was saying, as soon as you start telling people stuff, they start interjecting their opinions, and then they might interject doubt and all kinds of things like that. And it's going to throw you off. And you might start doubting your own dream, and that's not good. So, yeah, when things are in the beginning stages, stay quiet about it. Do your thing. Don't look for a lot of attention. Just quietly go about your business. And when it's finally in its stage where you are going to bring it forth, then bring it forth. But at that point, you're right. You have already worked out all the details in your mind, and you feel strong about what you're doing. So therefore, you're going to be able to have the the armor. I'll just use that word. You'll have your armor against whatever comes at you. Although allowing people, at some point, sometimes it's good to allow for input from trusted people, but not maybe not so much your friends, because your friends might just tell you what you want to hear. Maybe go to some people you don't know that well and ask their opinions, because they might give you the real opinion, because they don't know you that well and they don't have an emotional attachment to you. So it's not always easy, and it's kind of scary asking somebody you don't hardly know about something, but I see that as a good thing, because a lot of times you go to all your buds, and your buds are going to be right behind you on it, and they're going to say, yeah, yeah, go for that, do this, do that. And I don't mean you don't go to your friends for support. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you just have to, yeah, yeah, building in obscurity. That's a really cool topic. And yeah, I just wanted to say that Emmett Fox, I read that book and I still have it since I was 25 years old, and it's really fueled my life. And I've built my life a lot around his teachings. So yes, thank you for this great topic
Well,
and for
thank you, Jane.
reminding me.
And it's I think a lot about what you said. The word momentum comes to mind. Get started, develop some momentum. And then when people do disagree or say, "Oh, that'll never work," then you've already got that momentum wound up. But great words, thank you. And then finally, we'll wrap it up today with Star Soup. Star Soup, what do you think?
Hey, Dr. Heath, thank you for having me. Hello. And I'm so glad you waited until I came after Jane because she put a good point forward, and that is, well, let me just start from where I wanted to start. Um, Everybody should have a tinker workshop to experiment and try new things. Put down, the crossword puzzles and the doom scrolling, and experiment. But when you're ready to bring something new forward, double check, get a litmus test, sanity check with not necessarily your friends like Jane said, but you know somebody. Make sure that you're not reinventing the wheel, and before you go bring your idea to market. But do absolutely have a workshop to test out, in obscurity, learn and try new things. So many people just waste all their time with networking and LinkedIn and not even experimenting. But you need to play with new things to really, if you want to advance into something new and not just do the daily grind. But I do agree, with starting in obscurity. A fatal flaw would be staying, um, keeping your cards close to your chest, and bringing something to market that is a failure because you just reinvented the wheel. And I'll give an example of a few things that don't work in obscurity. You've got locks, security, through obscurity, software failures left and right, where people keep their cards close to their chest. They build video games that are easily hacked, and then on day one, nobody enjoys the game because there's hackers, and the game flops, and you lose hundreds of millions of dollars because you didn't use best practices. You used obscurity that were simple flaws people could just get around and ruin the experience for everybody. So there's going to be, a time and a place to look, to reach out, and make sure that you're not just reinventing the wheel, or bringing some bad product to market. That's all I wanted
I
to say.
love the great points. Great points. Absolutely. There's time and a place to look for information, look for feedback. You have to be very strategic, very intentional with that. I want to thank you guys for being here today. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have a subscriber only space. We're going through the alphabet, the ABCs of mental health. And tomorrow is the letter C. And I look forward to that 20-minute space tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. If you guys aren't available to listen live, then of course, all my spaces are recorded. Just to kind of wrap it up. Number one, Dylan taught us invent before you're discovered. He didn't wait for a label. He just started inventing. Write or create or do your thing every day. Practice what you're doing every day, because excellence only comes through repetition. Not everything is going to be great, but greatness with Dylan grew from this daily repetition. Adopt a useful myth. Who all knows who Bob Zimmerman is? Raise your thumbs. Bob Zimmerman, anybody? Bob Zimmerman? Yeah, that was Bob Dylan. And so he adopted a myth not just for his audience, but to direct his own thinking. Ignore the demand. Number four, ignore the demand for pigeonholing. You don't got to stay in the same pigeonhole. You can innovate, you can evolve. And get out there and evolve, get out there and create, get out there and do your thing, even in the shadows, especially in the shadows, even in obscurity, and create for yourself some glory days to look back on. We'll catch you next time.